OMG, it's in.
Coming to you directly from Northeast Ohio. Welcome to the Force Out. From youth baseball to the big leagues, we have all the bases covered for you. Listen 24/7 on SoundCloud, Apple Music, or at theforceout.com.
Hello and welcome to the Force Out, the inaugural episode. I'm your host, Josh Bieneman. I and everyone here at Force Baseball are truly appreciative that you tuned in here today. We've been probably talking about starting a podcast for at least several months, if not closer to a year. And the discussions we've been having is how can we bring some more value to the teenage player, or even the 9-10, all the way up through mom and dad and grandparents that can kind of give the backstory of what it is to be a baseball player and truly take that journey. I think it's something unique, and I think that it is something that is not truly told enough. Some of the problems that we see are that a lot of players, a lot of parents turn on Baseball Tonight or turn on SportsCenter or scrolling through Instagram or Twitter, whatever it may be, and seeing the highlights of the pinnacle of a player's career, meaning that they're seeing the top 10 plays, they're seeing the walk-off home run, they're seeing the College World Series and seeing the guy make the dive-in catch in the hole. What we're not hearing enough of is the story of how that player was able to put himself in that position to be able to make that catch, to be able to swing at that 2-0 pitch and hit it out to right. And our goal here is to try to bring on some guys and have some dialogue about what that journey is like, because I think players are a lot more relatable to their icons, a lot more relatable to the guys at the highest level than they realize. You know, our first guest for me was a no-brainer. He's a player that I had the opportunity to coach in 2010 and 2011 at St. Ignatius High School in Cleveland, Ohio. His name is Mike Horejsei. Mike was our undersized 5'9", maybe 5'10" on a great day with brand new metal spikes standing on concrete first baseman. And the reason I wanted to have him on this show and hitting leadoff for the Force Out was because Mike went from our undersized first baseman at St. Ignatius as a senior, fast forward 4 or 5 years later, and he is a pitcher in the Chicago White Sox organization. And Mike was your prototypical quality, just overall good high school baseball player as a senior. And I specifically remember talking to Mike, and he was trying to figure out what he was going to do at the college level, if he was going to go on and pursue baseball in college or if he was just going to focus on academics. And 2 or 3 years later, I hear that he is then pitching at Ohio State, which is a great story that Mike will get into. And then 2 or 3 years past that, he's with the Chicago White Sox. So he is a unexpected story, and I think an extremely relatable story, especially to 16 through 18-year-old guys that think that their destiny is kind of written out for them. If they're going to play Division II, Division III, then that means that is going to be their final destination. Mike has proved that there is always a next level if you're willing to make sacrifices and if you're willing to not accept no as an answer. So hope you enjoyed the interview. All right, as promised, we have a former St. Ignatius Wildcat, a Maverick, a Buckeye, and a White Sox farmhand. Been around the block. I'm really excited to have you on today, Mike. I know we haven't talked in a while, so I'm looking forward to catching up. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for reaching out, and definitely excited to be able to talk here and reconnect.
For sure, man. So, yeah, it really has been a while. Let's kind of go back to 2012. So I remember finishing up the season, and obviously by that time, for the most part, a lot of the seniors kind of know where they're going, and I knew you had a lot of talent. You were starting first baseman. I know we kind of worked with you a little bit pitching, and then we kind of lost touch, and it was really all of a sudden I heard that you were pitching, and then you were doing well, and then you jumped on with Ohio State, and the rest is history, man. I mean, you went on to get an experience in minor league baseball. I know you just hung that up. So I'm looking forward, I'm sure the listeners are as well, as what you've been doing since St. Ignatius and how you've been able to catapult your career to the level that you took it to.
Yeah, Wow, like it definitely has been a fun ride and a lot of, I guess, a roller coaster along the way. But it was amazing. I'd have to say, let's see, I think it was actually 2011 I graduated, and yeah, I was starting first baseman at Ignatius. I think I was listed at about 5'8", so I had no scholarship offers, especially not D1 for baseball, and I was all set going to Ohio State. And I remember getting my acceptance letter, and then finding out that they didn't have like room for me on the main campus. So I ended up getting bumped to the branch campus at Ohio State Mansfield, and that was a great year, great learning experience. And I'll dive into that in a little bit. But so I ended up there for a year, and then transferred to the main campus in Columbus. And 4 years later, after figuring out how to pitch, and I heard my name get called by the Chicago White Sox to get drafted. And wow, what a journey it was.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So I started scouting. Now, obviously, I'm low man on the totem pole associate under John Pyle with the Red Sox. And 2016 was my first year. And I was down in Ohio State. I was down to see a couple of – you had pretty good outfield that year. So I was down there seeing a couple guys. And I circled back with my boss. And the night I was there, you didn't pitch. And he asked, you see that Horejsei kid? I'm like, Horejsei? And we started talking. And I think he had seen you, a couple other scouts have seen you. And I remember circling back maybe a couple of weeks before the draft and calling Coach Gaynor. I'm like, Horejsei's going to get drafted. And sure enough, man, your name was called. So I'm sure that was an exciting time for you.
Oh, that's an awesome story. I didn't even know about that. That's awesome.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. So at OSU Mansfield, I honestly, personally, I really don't know a lot about that division, if it's independent or whatever it may be. I remember when I was at Notre Dame College, we went down and played a series. I think it was a weekend series against OSU Mansfield or one of the OSU satellite campuses. But if you can kind of dive into exactly what that level is. Now, every junior, sophomore, freshman, the idea and the goal is, I want to go play Big Ten or I want to go play ACC or SEC. And sometimes that's a possibility for the top 10 or top 5% guys. And a lot of times guys need a bridge. And I know for me, and I'm sure some of the guys listening, JUCO was that bridge. And just the Tri-Cs around here, or the Lakelands, but I don't think a lot of guys know about OSU Mansfield in that division. So if you kind of dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, so as we were talking, Ohio State Mansfield is the branch campus for main campus Ohio State. I think Ohio State has like 6 of these satellite campuses, and they're honestly fantastic. Small little campuses, not an abundant amount of students, which is good. Classrooms are small, but they still offer almost every introductory course that you would take as a freshman and or sophomore at Ohio State. So, and I had housing there, so it was great. It was great first year. I was trying to do mechanical engineering, so I was able to start getting into some intro engineering courses. And then I heard that they had a baseball team there, and we were called the Mansfield Mavericks. And so we are joined with – they have a community college that kind of uses our buildings at Ohio State called NC State. And so students from that school and students from Ohio State Mansfield come together to form a baseball team. Now, the league we were in, I think we were officially like independent, I think. We were considered more like club/independent, but we still played competitive baseball. We played, I know OU, Ohio University has a couple branch campuses, and they actually have some really good branch campus like teams. And so we played a couple of their teams, which are really good. We played a couple teams that traveled in from out of state. I believe Indiana had a school come in. So it was competitive baseball, and it was, I want to say it was a combination of freshmen in college and those players in high school that just needed that stepping stone to understand the transition of high school and college, and get that growing pain year out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
So you saw a lot of that talent, which is fantastic. And so it was competitive. It was a good team, and it was a lot of fun. And I enjoyed it. And I mostly led off, and I played first base. I did a little bit of pitching for him. Didn't go too deep with it, but yeah, I definitely pitched a little bit. But I mean, I was mainly first base again and hitting, so it's kind of funny how I ended up becoming a pitcher at the end.
Yeah, I guess that kind of brings me into my next point because just knowing you personally and getting the pleasure to coach you for 2 years, I remember vaguely our senior year, I think it was maybe right after tryouts, we were kind of getting ready to break for the spring, and I think you threw a couple bullpens, and it looked pretty good. And obviously, you had an arm that always worked pretty well; it's pretty loose. And then I think you may have threw a little bit that senior year, and then all of a sudden, I hear like you're a high 80s, low 90s guy. So, I guess my first question is: was it at Mansfield? Was it somebody that kind of said, "Hey, come over here and let's see what you got on the bump"? Was it a need? And how did you get into pitching? And then how did you make that jump from Mansfield to Ohio State?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it was in high school that I actually kind of gave up pitching. I didn't want to do it anymore after I turned 15. I had a bunch of arm injuries just from growing. My tendons kept just pulling on my growth plates. So I kept fracturing my growth plates, and I was kind of sick of doctor's appointments and always getting shut down and finding out I was out for a couple months. So I was ready to give up pitching. And then I just remember senior year there, we had a good pitching staff, but it felt like our depth was we needed a little bit more depth. So I went up to Coach Gaynor and I said, "Hey, like I'm not signing on anywhere to play college ball. I'm like, this is my senior year. I don't want to regret anything. I'm like, if you can use me as an arm, do it. I'm ready to go." And yeah, I remember throwing. I think I threw 4 innings. I think I had like 2 or 3 saves actually.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty much just all fastballs. That was it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when I was at Mansfield, then when I tried out for the team, I told him I just wanted to play first base and hit. But then our coach there, Dan Kreischer, he asked me, he's like, "Do you want to try pitching?" And I said, "You know what the heck, let's give it a shot." So I started throwing a little bit for him, and he gave me a call and said, "Hey, I have a friend who's a Pittsburgh Pirates scout. He's like, I feel like he would like to see you pitch." And at the time, I didn't think much of it. It was one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, maybe he wants to just work on some stuff with me or something. So I went to this guy's facility down in Mansfield for a Pittsburgh Pirate scout, and he had me pitch for him. I think I threw like 30 or 40 pitches, and he just said, gave me some tips and stuff like that, and he gave me a lot of encouragement, and he liked what he saw. So I just went on the rest of the season kind of pitching here and there, coming out of the bullpen, I started maybe 1 game or 2, and the rest was just hitting. So I didn't really think much about it in that meeting with that Pittsburgh Pirates scout, and I wish I could remember his name. So I apologize there that I can't give credit to him. But yeah, he was actually the first guy that really said, "Hey, you got an arm for pitching," but I kind of never thought about it again. And then I finally made that transition to Columbus campus, and again, I didn't have really contacts with the coaches down there. They didn't know who I was. So kind of a long, funny story how I ended up trying out for the team. So that was kind of my journey, though, as a pitcher from Ignatius, of throwing maybe about 4 innings in my career there to all of a sudden ready to try out for Ohio State main campus baseball.
That's amazing, man. So we have a lot of guys, and I've been fortunate to be around a whole spectrum of athletes, guys going on to play in the ACC to guys that are just grinding along and trying to figure it out late in their careers as a junior high school and just trying to plug on somewhere. And I think there's like 2 misconceptions that – and you've lived it, so I do want to ask you about it. There's a misconception where a kid really wants to go to this Big Ten school or ACC school, and I'm going to go there and I'm just going to go try out in the fall. And the coaches don't know much about them. Maybe they went to a couple camps or whatever it may be, and we try to educate them that yeah, maybe you get an opportunity to go out there on a fall day and showcase what you're doing. But I think some of them are a little bit naive that they can go out there and they're just going to make the club. And then the opposite side of it is that I think a lot of players think, well, if I'm not going to play at a big school, then I'm okay with that, but I'm kind of just giving into that this is going to be the end of the road. I think we have a lot of guys that go into Division III baseball or JUCO and think, okay, well, you know what? I'm willing to sacrifice going to a big school just because I want to play. I just want to go have some fun. I want to get an education. And I don't really think they see past that 4-year window because I think a lot of people are very tuned into ESPN and football and basketball and the way that works, where if you're not at a big school, it is truly pretty much over. You know what I mean? But that's the great thing about baseball is that you can develop late. You can go to a JUCO, you can go to a D3, have 2 or 3 good years, and all of a sudden you got an opportunity in the minor leagues to maybe make a run at it. So my question is, how did you get that workout in the fall? Was it like an open tryout? Was it a 1 day or a 1 week window where anybody on campus could come work out? And then the other side of it is, I'm sure it wasn't easy. You know what I mean? Your story takes you kind of right up to the White Sox organization, but I'm sure there was a lot going on behind the scenes that was probably frustrating at times. You probably had to grind a little bit and annoy a couple of people just to kind of get out on that field and get an opportunity.
Yeah. I'll start off by saying, if you're a high school player that doesn't have any Division I team, even Division II team looking at you, it's not the end of the road. And there's so much to say about going to there's those NAIA schools, junior colleges, Division III, Division II, and Division I. Every tier of baseball is gonna see competition. You have the opportunity to develop, and it's how you approach it, though. So I took kind of both routes, I guess. I didn't have any offers out of high school because I had some arm injuries and I was a very undersized first baseman. And to me, though, growing up, my love was Ohio State. I don't think I ever talked about going to any other school. So my vision was always locked on Ohio State. So I don't know how much I would have budged had another team came calling for me that was, what I was maybe looking for when it came to education. I was trying to look for engineering. I want to look for something that was decently close to home. So distance wasn't too much of a factor for me. But I wanted good education, somewhere that at least my family could come and be like, if I ever did play baseball, they'd be like, oh, wow, look at, like we get to come watch you play. This is just fun, fantastic. And I wanted a place that I could grow and develop as a person, both on the field and off the field. And from the day I can remember, Ohio State was always that dream. So for me, I was always focused going there, no matter if I had baseball or not. I was going there as a student to try and be the best person possible and get my education. So for other kids, though, who maybe don't have that favorite school, growing up or something like that, or, are on the border of maybe Division III's come and calling, but a Division I or II school said, hey, if you come walk on or try out in the fall with us, you might have a position. So there's a lot of factors you have to consider, but I will say this. If you feel like you're not fully developed, which is probably about 99% of all high school kids at this age, between the ages of 15 to about 18, you're not fully developed. You haven't hit that peak yet, or at least you shouldn't have. And you have so much room to grow. So just because you're not going and being the Friday night starter at a Vanderbilt doesn't mean that just because you're going to Baldwin Wallace or John Carroll is any different. You have the opportunity to grow. You have the opportunity to be seen. And I played with many kids that were from Division II, Division III, NAIA schools that were in the White Sox organization. And then across the field in the other dugout were guys from these schools as well that, you never heard about until all of a sudden we're in professional baseball. And it's like these kids are 6'4", hitting home runs, or they're, fast stealing bases or throwing 95. Like, there's so much room for development, and that's what kids need to learn in high school, is that it's not all going to happen at once, and the journey isn't going to be maybe how you planned it out, but it doesn't mean that the end goal has to change just because you hit some bumps in the road.
Right.
So to go on to the second part of your question then, with Ohio State and how it kind of came about with that tryout. So when I, excuse me, so when I was getting ready to move into main campus, my dad kept asking me, he's like, hey, you going to try out for the team? You know, and I was like, I might as well. And so I kind of worked out all summer. My dad put together a lifting program for me, and I did my own conditioning. And we set I had a private trainer, kind of a hitting instructor that I had grown up with, that was giving me lessons still. So I was just hitting all the time, and never thought about pitching really. And I remember the first week on campus, I emailed the head coach of Ohio State, Greg Beals, and kind of gave a little background of who I was, and said that I really want to come out for the tryout, that I'm left-handed first baseman. I'm like, if you need me to pitch, I can, but I'm hoping to come out and try out as a first baseman. And got an email back, and he said, yeah, tryouts in 2 days. He goes, you're welcome to come. He said, just fill out some paperwork. And it was crazy. I had to leave a class early to get to the tryout, and I show up, and I think there's about 30 kids there, because it wasn't very big whatsoever. So to answer your question, if it was an open tryout or not, I honestly don't know, just because I'd kind of just sent an email out of the random, and I got an invite back. So I don't know if he looked into me or, maybe called around about me. I'm not too sure. But yeah, he gave me the green light to come to the tryout, and about 30 of us there. And so the tryout was 2 hours. We showed up. We did running. We did some fielding drills. They had us throw a little bit for them out in the outfield just to test our arms. And then we went to the cages and we hit. And I just remember I had finished up fielding ground balls, and I was walking into the cages to hit. And someone came up to me and said, hey, do you pitch? And I said, I'm like, I could. I haven't pitched in a while, and I'm like, I haven't really worked on. They're like, all right, well, at the end of the trial, will you come throw off the mound for us? And I said, sure. And I completely forgot about it, because I went to the cages to hit, and I was just so focused on the hitting to do really well with it, because I thought I'd performed decently well out at first base. And so I'm hitting there the whole time, and I finish up, and I was talking to the head coach, Greg Beals, and he and I were just talking for a minute, and then one of the coaches came in and said, hey, are you still going to come pitch for us? And I said, oh yeah, definitely. So I quickly ran out thinking that the tryout's still going on, and as I'm running past down the foul line to go down to the bullpen, all the kids are just sitting on the bleachers, the coaches are all lined up by the bullpen. I was like, am I the last kid? And I must be. And all of a sudden it hit me. I'm like, this is the end of the trial. I'm like, this is it. So I just hopped up on that mound, and I think I threw maybe about 20 pitches. Had no idea how it looked. I felt really awkward, but I was just trying to throw it as hard as I could. And I remember getting off the mound, and one of the assistant coaches at the time there came up to me, and he goes, do you know how hard you throw? And I said, I have no idea. And he goes, oh, okay. He goes, how many years of eligibility do you have left? And I said, I think about 3 to 4. I'm like, I'm not sure if my Mansfield eligibility year counted or not. And so he just nodded his head and walked away, and that was it. And so the coach thanked us, and I went home for the night, and then got an email the next morning and a phone call asking me to come in to sit with Coach Beals in his office to talk about the fact that I made the team.
Wow. Did you ever find out how hard you threw that day?
Yeah, they said I was hitting 92, 93.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like a movie, man. That's pretty cool.
I couldn't believe it. It was just one of those things where, I don't know, the last time I had been gunned,
Yeah.
I remember. I think it might have been Ignatius, and I swear I think I was pumping maybe 85, 86.
Yeah.
So, to all of a sudden hear those numbers, I kind of laughed. I thought maybe their radar gun was charged up.
Now,
So
one thing I want to branch off with that is you kind of brought up or brought me to a good question, is that there's a lot of players, and I probably say it's mainly high school players that really haven't hit the level of adversity where they really see how much competition is out there. And there'll be a player that he's a catcher, you know what I mean? And you can't persuade him otherwise, or he is a middle infielder. No, I'm not an outfielder. And they'll kind of make excuses for it.
yeah.
Now, was there a certain point where you said, look, I'm just trying to make it to the highest level and I'm okay doing whatever it takes to get there? Or do you think it's more of a, I guess, in your DNA or in your upbringing of just being a team guy and just doing whatever it takes to help out the club or help out your career, that you go into first as a freshman at Mansfield as a first baseman, and then you go to a tryout at Ohio State as a first baseman, and now you're a pitcher. Was there a certain point where you just said, hey, I'm willing to do whatever, or was that kind of just ingrained in you at a young age?
Yeah. So, I mean, from a young age, I'd always been taught you want to be remembered as a teammate. A lot of people get remembered as like, oh, he was probably our best player growing up, or that kid hit a ton of home runs. But at the end of the day, most people remember who their best teammates were, who the guys that were fun to be around. So I would always had that like inner drive to try and be the best teammate I could be. If that happened, I'm not too sure. I guess you would have to ask former teammates of mine if it worked out or not. But so I always want to do whatever was best for the team, whatever could help us win, whatever, helped other guys out. So I was always there to be the best for the team. Now, there comes a point where you do have to be selfish in the aspect of if you know you want your career to go a certain direction and you had the opportunity to, or doors might open if you pursue other opportunities like I did with pitching, because I could have easily said, no, I don't pitch, and I might not be sitting here talking to you.
Right.
So it's one of those things where you have to look at where your career's at, where you're at as a person. If you're willing to make that change, I say do it. It doesn't hurt you to try and, branch out to be a multi-tool athlete, I guess you could say. So if a coach is asking you to play outfield, go play outfield. Even if you've never done it before, it doesn't hurt to learn. Start studying how to be a good outfielder if it's going to help your team out. Or maybe your best defense is someone else at first base or at third base and putting you in the outfield because you got the stronger arm or something. So it's like, don't be so hesitant when other people bring up changes, because it could actually be your best opportunity as a player. You just don't see it yet. So for me, being I think now I'm like maybe 5'9.5". I think I grew about an inch from high school. When they asked me, or when Coach Beals sat me down and told me, hey, you can put the bat away and the glove away, you're going to be a pitcher only for us. It hurt for a minute, and it actually took a while for me to finally get past that idea that I'm no longer a position player. That all I wanted to do was play first base. I loved it. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to hit. I loved just going in the cages on my own, being able to hit, put on some music. I loved just being a hitter and studying it. And so I guess my first year when I redshirted that first year with Ohio State, it was a lot of growing pains because I had to learn to become a pitcher, and I had to get that player mindset out of there, that I'm no longer a first baseman. And so you might have more questions on how I got rid of this. So just to quickly sum up your answer, I say players, be the best teammate you can be and do what you think will be best to help that team win, and listen. Be a good listener to your coaches, to your teammates, and to be able to branch out into other opportunities. And don't be hesitant just because, I've been shortstop my whole life or leadoff hitter my whole life. Just because you move a position doesn't mean that you're a worse player. It could actually be a better position for you. So be open to the opportunities. And at the same time, if there's certain areas where you could be the best at, don't be afraid to speak up a little bit too, and be a little selfish in the aspect of, I can do this. if you need me, I can be the best shortstop on the team, or I can be the best 4-hole hitter and drive in those RBIs for you. Now go prove it, though, that you can do it. That means you got to work harder and study the game more to understand how to be that best player there. And if that means you moving on to college to be able to do that as well, you got to prove it now. So there's a give and take on both ends.
That's good, man. I think that's really good advice. I think that's an awesome story, too, because there's so many guys that just assume that if they're at a lower level, whether it be JUCO, like I said, or Division III, or if we have a guy listening that is at OSU Mansfield, that it's not that you're sacrificing anything. It's just a part of the journey, because I think so many guys get caught up in this trap is that if you're going to end up playing professional baseball, it's kind of you were born that way and you were physically separate from the rest of the crowd, and it's just going to happen, you know. And I think what you're talking about is just going out and grinding and sending an email one day, and all of a sudden 2 days later you have to perform at your highest level and you get the opportunity and you have to do something that you never done before. It's completely buying into another position. I think that's really good advice, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd branch out. Be the best player you can be. That's all I got to say is don't be hesitant.
Yeah. Now let's fast forward to I guess your life in the minor leagues, since we're talking right now in March. Spring training. Now I imagine some people listening have been to big league camp or been to big league games, and they kind of think of it as a tune-up, or Sports Center will show Bryce Harper hitting 2 home runs in spring training and stuff like that. And it's more so what's on TV and what they think is just the gameplay. And they see the big leaguers, and they see the guys that are probably not going to have a typical day, or some may not. But I want to see if you can kind of elaborate on minor league spring training. I know they report a little bit later, and what that day looks like, what that week looks like. Obviously, the big league club, maybe we're going to have 40, 50 guys rotating through camp. Then you have a million dudes that are fighting for spots, guys that are returning from the club the prior year. You're going to have some bonus babies there. You're going to have the former first-round pick that's worth $6 million, and then you got a couple arms and a couple catchers that are popping out there from indie ball. You know what I mean? I imagine it's a little bit different than big league camp. If you can kind of go over what minor league spring training is like. Is it stressful as far as you know that they're making decisions throughout camp on who's going to make that final roster and what level you're going to be at, and kind of just elaborate on I guess everything in total.
Yeah. So minor league spring training is actually very similar to major league spring training, at least in the day-to-day activities. So usually the major league guys, they've earned the right. They get there to the field first. They get to be out on the practice fields. Most facilities, I'd say, probably have like 4 to 5 practice fields. There's usually like a major league hitting cages, and then there's minor league hitting cages. Our facility with the White Sox, we had a major league weight room and then a minor league weight room. And it wasn't so much to separate us to say that you guys aren't good enough to be in this area. It was more or less to show, if you want to make it, this is what we have to offer you. Now it's like, get up here, you know, prove to us that you're ready to be with these guys, with the major league guys. So it was actually, I kind of like the mindset that they had, that they wanted us to earn that right to be on the, you know, to be in the weight room, to earn the right to be in the major league clubhouse and that type of stuff. So minor league spring training, though, it was a really cool experience. I'd definitely say stressful in the aspect of every day I think someone was getting cut. So I got to know the coaching staff there and the player development staff there very well, and I know it affected them a lot during spring training when they had to make cuts. But yeah, you have guys from everywhere. I had guys sitting next to me that were 16 years old that didn't know any English. All they knew was that baseball is a universal language, so they knew how to throw it and they knew how to hit. So that was really fun trying to learn to communicate with them, and you know, guys playing music in the locker room, and they would show that they know the song, but they don't know the lyrics, and they would try and dance around to it, or they'd see guys playing card games and stuff like that, and they would try and like get in on the card game and learn the game and stuff like that. So it was really cool communicating with guys from different countries, different ages. We had a couple guys in the minor league locker room that were previous major league players that were literally doing whatever it took to try and get back on a major league roster. So they were signing just minor league contracts and trying to earn the right to get on that roster again or get the call up. One guy was, I think, 30 years old at one time. And he had like 200 or 300 plus innings of major league time. And so it's like, you look at that aspect, and he approached spring training much differently than everyone else. Just because he had that maturity, he's older. He's been around. And then you got, like you said, the bonus babies, the guys who signed for the big money early rounds. They definitely know who they are, and you know who they are. But then I was also friends with a bunch of them, and there's some really good guys just because they have money now and they're young. I mean that, you know, they're any different or anything like that. They still go about their day, but they definitely, I think they get, I wouldn't say treated differently in that aspect. I felt like everyone got treated pretty fairly. I personally didn't see any discrepancy in how people got treated. So I really enjoyed that everyone had their fair opportunity to perform and show who they were. And, but you can definitely see where the bonus babies maybe, get that extra swing in the cage sometimes, where, I don't know. It's just how it is. There's a reason.
Yeah, it's a big investment.
Yeah, there's why he was paid, $5 million or something, or $700,000, just because he's supposed to be in that major league clubhouse in a few years, if not sooner. So it's a huge investment, and it's very understandable. I personally was a senior sign out of college, which means you get pretty much bare minimum, which is exactly what I did. And I had no problem with that. It was like, I got this opportunity now, because guess what? As soon as you enter that locker room or as soon as you step on that field, it's a level playing field. It's still baseball. So you do exactly what you've been doing that got you to that point, and that's play baseball. Nothing changes just because someone has a deeper pocketbook, or just because someone has Nike signing them or giving them free gear and signing on with them, or someone has so-and-so as an agent, or, or someone's little brother. Nothing changes. You still got to play baseball. And if you're getting guys out, or if you're the guy getting on base all the time hitting, guess what? You're going to stand out. And so the day-to-day stuff was cool. We got there first thing in the morning, usually probably about 6:30, I would say. We were getting there to the field. They'd have food ready for us, so we'd eat. Guys would get some morning workouts in, depending on if they're pitching or however their bodies felt. It was kind of personal preference. But we always had a daily lift that you had to do, of some sort of either conditioning or lifting. And then, so that would go until about 8. We'd have a team meeting outside in a pavilion, with probably about 100 minor leaguers out there. They always try to bring in either someone to speak to us, or they had a special coach come in to talk. We had Bo Jackson talk to us the one day, so that was really cool. Hall of Famer Jim Thome, he came and talked to us. He worked a lot with us. He was at our spring training all this last year in 2017, so that was really cool. But yeah, so we would usually have a team meeting about 8, and then we would head out to the fields, usually about 8:30ish, 9 o'clock. And then we would get our day started. We would be out there. We'd either start right away with drills. They usually divide it up. We had 4 fields, so they divided up into groups. You'd be either AAA field, AA field, single A, or high A. And guys got rearranged almost on a daily basis. So pretty much where you were on the field didn't necessarily mean that was going to be your assignment for the season. But you could definitely tell where kids stressed about that. And so that's where spring training is very stressful. Guys are constantly moving around. Like I said, getting cut. If you're not performing, you're always thinking you're on the line. So we would do practice. We would jump into BP. And then there was always usually some sort of game going on. So we would have either AA was playing high A that day, AAA was playing AA, or we had the Dodgers facility right next to us. We were playing the game with them. And then once we really fired up games, we were traveling to, Padres, the Indians. I'm trying to think who else was over in that area. I think the Rangers, we were traveling with them or they would come to us. So almost on a daily basis, you were playing in a game of some sort. And then as a player, you weren't necessarily in every game. They had assignments. So pretty much as a pitcher, you were every maybe like 3 days, you would maybe see a game. And then you'd throw just bullpen sessions, or you would do some live batting practice instead to kind of fill that void if you hadn't gotten in the game yet. So we would usually do that until about noon or so. We'd be out on the fields practicing BP, come back for lunch, hang out for a little bit, and then if you had a game, you would go back out to the fields or get on the bus to travel to wherever the game was at. And then if you had an off day that day, you could head home back to the hotels, or if some guys had houses down there. So usually our days were over, though. If you had an off day by like 1 o'clock, if you got your workouts in, if you were in a game during spring training, you probably, depending on the time of the game, getting back, 4 or 5 o'clock at night. So it varied on the day, but we were very much similar to the major league side. They practiced first thing in the morning, and they were usually getting off the fields as we were starting to head out there, and then they would get ready for their games as well.
Very cool. So speaking of the different levels, you're talking about different fields, and one thing I could only imagine is that professional baseball, it's a grown man sport. I can only imagine at the high school level if there were 3 different fields and it was constantly shuffled up where you're the varsity starting second baseman and one day you're with the JV. You know what I mean? And still having the mindset that, okay, I'm going to go perform, rather than getting in your own head and thinking, oh, my God, am I getting demoted? What does that mean? Just having the maturity and the mindset that, okay, well, I'm going to go perform on the A field, or I'm going to go perform in the high A field or double A, and not letting that stuff affect you. But speaking of the different levels, I guess we go all the way back to Ignatius, all the way up to the White Sox and everything in between from Mansfield to Ohio State. Was there anything other than just maybe physical tools that you saw every time you made that jump up from Ignatius to Mansfield, Mansfield to OSU to the minor leagues, that you saw, I guess, a more concentrated amount of something in each player mentally, or just the way they went about their game, or maybe just their approach off the field or anything like that?
Yeah, there is definitely differences. I would say I saw a lot in the difference in high school to college, especially guys that were scholarship recruits, in the aspect of they had a different mental approach, I guess you could say. Physically, there is a big difference between high school and college. Doesn't necessarily mean you're a better player because of it, but you could see guys, maybe faster bat speed, or that, like kid in high school now all of a sudden has a couple more miles an hour on that fastball that maybe when faced him in high school he didn't have. So physical, kids are still growing. So it was common to see a lot of guys that were either already developed it in their prime in the aspect of like that, that young adult age of their body development. And then you saw a lot of guys that had just a ton of potential and their bodies just hadn't caught up yet, but it was there. So the coaches obviously, wanted them on the team to give them a year or two of development to prove what they have, because they saw something in them. So I'd have to say, though, more or less, I saw at Ohio State was this, like, I don't even know if it's a word, self-belief, I guess you could say. Like, they knew they were at Ohio State for a reason. They knew they were recruited there for a reason. And so they had this, like, I don't want to say I don't want to make it sound negative, but they had this, like, inner self belief that they knew they were good. They knew they had the talent either. And that's important, because, to be honest, I'll have to expand on it later in the mental approach, because it took me time to learn that myself. And I didn't have that when I started out there. And so these guys knew that they were good. And it was just a matter of putting it all together now. You still had a couple guys that I think they walked around thinking that they questioned, like, am I really here? competing against these guys or competing with my teammates and friends now. But for the most part, that jump from high school to college was guys knew that they were good and they were in that position for a reason. So it was more of that mental, that inner self-belief that they had, and how they approached the game because of it. They had more confidence and I guess you could use that word swagger. They carry themselves differently.
I think you got to have that. I remember so I played in the Valley League down in Virginia, and I'm coming from Baltimore City Community College. I guess kind of similar to you, a guy that really on paper shouldn't be there. And my first game there, I'm playing against guys from LSU and Florida State. And I remember just in pregame watching the guys, and there were some tools that I saw within a half an hour window where I said, I'm never going to be able to do that. Like, I'm not. And whether it be just in BP and seeing the big first baseman hitting with wood, hitting 430-foot shots at will, and knowing that physically I'm probably never going to be able to do that. But in half an hour, I have to go beat that guy. And I think it's tough because you have to have the inner confidence that if you are an undersized guy or if you're not a big tools guy, you have to find – it's almost like a boxer in a ring. You have to find a way to still win, even though the guy across the ring from you may be more physical. That doesn't necessarily mean that he can beat you or that he's going to outlast you. I think that's the biggest thing is you have to have the confidence, like you're saying, inside of you that you can go up against somebody that is maybe, quote unquote, a little bit more blessed or has some more God-given talent and still figuring out how to outlast that person.
Definitely. So keep going.
Yeah, and I guess now, so you're all done. I didn't realize until I reached out to you. So I guess post-playing, I know a lot of guys are trying to figure out, are they going to stay in baseball? Are they going to go into a different avenue? I know a lot of OSU guys go back down to Columbus. What are your plans now that you're, I guess, it sounds weird, you're 25, 26, retired, because you usually hear retire with a 67-year-old, and that's the cool thing about baseball is you can be a 20-year-old retired guy. But what are your plans now that you're at a professional baseball?
Yeah, so once I had the talks with the White Sox and coming off some shoulder surgery and some complications with that, that realizing that the body just couldn't perform anymore at the level that it needed to compete. I finally had to unfortunately hang it up, and it was a very sad day. But now doesn't mean that the game is over for me. Doesn't mean that things end or things change. I went to Ohio State for a reason, got my degree in construction systems management, and so I'm working actually out in Willoughby as a project estimator for a general contractor construction firm out there. So I'm absolutely loving it. It's fantastic job and fantastic opportunity out there, and getting to work on $20-30 million projects, big. Wow. And projects are still growing in size and in money, so it's really cool to now get my hands on something new. But now I'm also coaching. I've been helping my nephews out coaching, and I realized I really do enjoy it. I wasn't sure if I could make that transition. And as a player, over the past couple of years, I had this new mindset that I developed while I was at Ohio State, and it helped me become a much better pitcher and definitely helped me get drafted for sure. And so it's hard to separate now the mindset of I'm no longer that pitcher or that player, and now become a coach and try to be patient and instruct kids. So I'm actually working in Willoughby as well as a pitching instructor out there for a place called Elite Performance. They have a gym for getting guys ready, prepared physically with their bodies. We have a really great coordinator out there. So Elite Performance Gym, I'm out there pitching, doing pitching instructions. So you can always get in contact with me if you're ever interested in even just talking more. My email here, I can give you is my last name, which is very hard. So it's Horejsei, which is HOREJSEI, @OSU.edu. So that's my contact info if anyone's ever interested. But yeah, I'm out there doing pitching instruction, Hopefully actually start up some hitting instruction maybe soon as well. And I'm loving it. I'm loving being able to work with these kids now and use the knowledge and that mindset that I keep talking about that helped me become the player that I became. And I'm trying to hopefully start these kids at a younger age because it took me a long time to learn it, and I wish I had figured it out sooner. It's one of those things where it's just like, obviously hindsight is amazing to look at when you realize, looking back now, how much it would have been beneficial if I had known this stuff sooner or heard it from someone else. So I'm trying to help these kids, and hopefully they're enjoying working with me, and it's been a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying it.
That's good, man. I know just being around you in high school, I think you're going to, if you choose to go in that direction, I think you're going to have, and sharing what you're talking about today, have a future in coaching. I'm looking forward to seeing, I guess, that next chapter for you because whatever it is, if you continue with your current job or dive into coaching, I think you'll be very successful. Well, I really do appreciate you sharing the story today, man. I learned a lot because we kind of lost touch after high school. And like I said, and when I reached out to you, I think it's important to kind of see behind the scenes because there's a lot of players, and I'm sure even while you were on the bump with the White Sox, I'm sure there was a kid in the stands that just assume that you just teleported there. You know what I mean? They don't see everything behind the scenes. And I really like that you were able to kind of dig in and talk about that. You have to hustle, you have to grind, you have to take risks, you have to adapt, you have to make sacrifices. Because I think a lot of players think that the guys on TV just ended up being there just because they were supremely talented. But I think your story is really a testament that you have to be able to adapt as you go to figure out how to get to your highest level.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, thank you so much for reaching out and wanting to hear my story. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of behind the scenes things that I did that helped me get to the level I was able to be the best athlete possible on that field, and be the best person I could be both on and off the field. That maybe this 30-minute conversation doesn't cover, and there's so much more to it than me showing up for that tryout and all of a sudden becoming a pitcher and then 4 years later getting drafted.
Yeah.
It definitely wasn't outlined in that aspect, and what I mean by that is I didn't have that detailed plan of, okay, I'm going to walk on, become a pitcher, strikes, get guys out, get drafted. It was just so much more studying and changing my diet, my workout program, my approach mentally to the game, and how I looked at hitters and how I looked at the game of baseball. And just I became educated in the aspect of I literally treated practice and my time away from the field as a classroom. I would study, watch YouTube videos. I would break down my mechanics. I started literally drawing out my pitching form to figure out what am I doing wrong that I can't throw a strike every time, that type of thing. And it forces you to become a perfectionist because once you learn that you want to be the best, but also you want your team to be the best, it's such a different story. And it took me a while to truly understand and grasp that. And once I finally did it, it was just a game changer. And getting out on that mound every single day was amazing. I loved it, and I was so happy that Coach Greg Beals and Coach Stafford at Ohio State and Coach Hollick gave me the opportunity and allowed me to grow and be an Ohio State Buckeye. I made a dream come true, getting to play there, and then I also made a dream come true somehow getting drafted. It was amazing to hear that phone call with my family around me. So, yeah, thank you so much, though, for reaching out. And, I mean, I love talking about it now that I can, hopefully help other kids. And, it's a long journey. And if you love baseball, just go for it. Just keep going. Doesn't matter what level, doesn't matter where you're at. It's a whole different aspect when you just absolutely love the game and want to try to be the best teammate and best person you can be both on and off the field.
Well, I appreciate it, buddy. Any young guys listening, any parents in Northeast Ohio, especially East Side, make sure you connect with, I guess now Coach Mike Horejsei. If you want more about his story or get some workouts in, I know if you're listening here in March or April, the spring's closely approaching, so make sure you connect. Again, man, I appreciate your time, buddy.
Yeah, thank you again. I appreciate it.